For many, the holiday season triggers a mix of feelings. We're excited for it to arrive, yet often we end up feeling overwhelmed once it does. So joining us with tips on how to keep the happy in the holidays, sociologist and happiness expert, Dr. Christine Carter. Thank you for chatting with us today. What's the best way to avoid being disappointed this holiday season?
You know, I think the best way to avoid being disappointed is to trade our high expectations for really big appreciation. So a ton of research shows us that when we consciously cultivate gratitude, we tend to feel happier. And as you probably know, around the holiday season, our expectations really go way up. We expect a lot of other people, we expect a lot of happiness from lots of events, and all of these high expectations sometimes are unrealistic, and when they go unmet, we tend to feel disappointed or frustrated or maybe even a little bit resentful, and those things are not happiness habits. So when we do start to notice that that's happening to us, we can use that as a cue or an opportunity, really, to slow down, take a step back, and really notice what it is that we feel grateful for in that given situation. So even though we may be very frustrated or very disappointed, we can often still find something that we appreciate. And when we shift our focus like that, we relieve ourselves of stress and we tend to feel a lot happier.
You have this fantastic concept. It's the gifting trifecta. What is it, and how do we make it happen?
Well, amount of research shows that we feel happier when we give to those in need. And so I've created this thing that I call a giving trifecta that I like people to try and shoot for by making their gift purchases through retailers that give a portion of the proceeds to causes that are close to your heart. So, for example, this year I will be making my gift purchases through the Amazon Smile program using my Chase Freedom card, because that creates this triple whammy that I'm talking about. So everybody on my list will get their present. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the Amazon Smile program will give money to a charity I've chosen, which is the Tipping Point, which helps families in need. And that Chase Freedom card gives me 5% back, cash back, and I then turn around and donate that to the Tipping Point as well. So this really makes my dollar go further. It really adds more meaning to my holiday purchases.
And it makes you feel good about yourself. And I think at the end of the day, that's the important part, because this time of year, and obviously I want your opinion, people seem like they're way, way too hard on themselves. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that we are too hard on ourselves. We have such high expectations of ourselves as well. And when we don't meet our own expectations, we start to feel overwhelmed, we feel stressed out. So it is really important to recognize that sleep is really important for your happiness. Lots of research shows that. And that if we don't say no enough, or we expect ourselves to do more than is really humanly possible, we're going to be exhausted and overwhelmed and stressed instead of happy over the holidays. And the whole point is that this is a season of joy, right? So we need to scale back on our expectations a little.
It is the season of joy, and I think there's so many opportunities to have more and more and more joy, because everybody is inviting us to different places. But you think it's okay to say no every once in a while, right?
I think it's not only okay, it's actually really important to have this critical skill, the ability to say no, right? So it's more important that you enjoy yourself. And if you're going to be too tired to enjoy yourself, then it's really critical that we say no. So we say yes because we want people to think that we're nice and we don't want to disappoint people. But actually, most people understand that we've got a lot going on, that our lives are already busy, and now we're adding the holidays into these already busy lives, and that sometimes we just need to say no. So it's totally okay. It's definitely necessary. It's also a skill that I think it's really important to practice before you need it. So have a go-to way that you feel comfortable saying no, and then practice it and use it frequently during this season.
Dr. Carter, that way to say no might be if you get yourself organized and then you know that you have a lot of commitments. If you have a calendar going, you can say, oh, you know what, I just can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when you get yourself organized, the important thing to do is not just to make a list, a long list of everything you have to do, because that can make you feel kind of overwhelmed, but to also decide when you're going to do each of those things. And it's not just so that you can see that you don't have time and you have a more authentic reason to say no, although that's really important. The other reason to do it is that when you decide when you're going to do something on your list, it allows your unconscious brain, for whatever reason, to relax around it a little bit. So what we know is if you make a list of things you have to do, but then you don't tell your brain when you're going to do them, your unconscious mind will remind you of everything you need to do. And that creates that kind of anxiety, like, I have too much to do and not enough time to do it, right? Those intrusive thoughts about having so much to do. But when we just decide when we will do something, for whatever reason, our brain relaxes and we can just get to it, right?
Dr. Carter, I love it, and you're absolutely right. I feel a little bit more calm just chatting with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for having me.
So everybody at home, remember, keep it simple, stay organized, and have yourself a very happy holiday. And if you want more information on what you've just heard, ChristineCarter.com. That's the place you have to go.